Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder
and lists.
And I just want to start by being really angry about something. So there was a post on Instagram addressing white women, asking us to do better and be better allies. And I commented on the post, which I would never do, except I'm a white woman and it was addressed to white women. And I said, I'm a white woman. I know what intersectionality is, and I have a podcast, and I will continue to talk about it and decentering white women and whatever. And this person said, why don't you do an entire episode about decentering white women? And I said, well, the podcast is true crime, so I probably wouldn't do an episode just on that because it would be kind of shocking to people. Like, this isn't the podcast that we've listened to for like 2.5 years. And she's like, just went in. She's like, you're performative and you want to pat yourself back or pat yourself on the back for your wokeness and you're phony. And I was like, no, I already said that we talk about it and we'll continue to do so as it pertains to true crime, which is
all the time,
all the fucking time.
Yeah, we try.
And so they keep going on and on about what a piece of shit I am. And I'm like telling Diva, and Diva's like, you can tell them that your co-host is a Latina woman.
Right.
And I'm like, great. And I tell them, and they're like, you're not allowed to say that. And I'm like, but you're attacking her podcast. Like, one of them went on to our Instagram and posted that we are using the trauma of people of color as porn. And I was like, actually, what we're doing is making sure that these cases get attention to them.
Right. And I mean, it's not like exclusively that, but like we try to include them often a lot. And it's like, yeah, it's just very funny. I love when you argue with people on the internet.
Well, the best part was that at least 2 of these women are white.
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I even trying to like justify my actions to you?
Yeah.
Like,
so apologies for not becoming a podcast about race issues only. I guess that means we're really bad people.
Well, you're fine. I'm a white lady, so apparently I'm terrible, at least in the eyes of, true white allies on Instagram. So,
she's doing the work. She's doing the hard work.
She's doing the work by telling me I'm not allowed to bring you up when you tell me to bring you up.
Yeah, yelling at people on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not allowed to talk about you being Latina, apparently. So,
and only the wokest white ladies go dunk on the podcast of a person of color. It's really, really cool and woke, special. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is they have no idea what they're talking about, and they're just like going crazy. And it's just like, well, that's really great. Good job, guys.
Fun times. Yeah.
Fun times. Anyway, Jesus Christ, what a joke. Okay. What are we doing this week?
I picked, and I wanted to do serial killers. So we're doing serial killers discovered in the last 5 years. The recent ones.
5 years. Yes.
Yes. And mine are both like the past 2 years, essentially.
See, I took the easy way out, I'm going to be honest. And I did ones that were not quite so recent because I have a hard time organizing the information in a meaningful way.
Gotcha.
I know. I'm sorry. And in order to give a better listening experience, I went for one that I felt was more complete. So it made it easier on my brain.
Okay.
So, and I guess I'm going first. Is there anything else we want to talk about besides like that ridiculous shit? Like,
no, that was fun.
Yeah. I just love that like you told me to bring you up and then this white woman told me I wasn't allowed to do that. And I'm like, okay, I'll be sure to let her know.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Oh, no, I've been like policed by like several white people on several occasions, and I've been like, hi, hello. Do you see that I'm brown?
Yeah, I'm just like, guys, come on. Ugh, whatever. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna go first. All right, so I'm doing the story of Paul Raymond Apodaca. And this story starts with a bang. Let me tell you. This takes place in New Mexico. And Paul Apodaca was born in 1968. He had at least one younger brother. It's unclear the type of life he had growing up because there's not a ton of information, but I think we'll get a picture in a second here.
Okay.
In 1995, when he was 27 years old, Paul was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the kidnapping and rape of his own 14-year-old stepsister.
Oh, God.
Coming in hot.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Fucking terrible. When arrested, he said that he did it so that he could be sent to prison to look after his younger brother, who had just been sentenced to 45 years for murder. So
Okay.
good family all around.
Wants to go visit. You couldn't have like stolen some bread or something instead of
Well, just
you're
get
trying
ready.
to go to prison if that's like your mission.
Yeah, I think I brought that up, but yeah, exactly. Like steal a car.
Yeah, do something
punch a cop.
Non-violent. Yeah.
Do something that benefits the world.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, he never fought the charges, but his defense team did try to get a reduced sentence for him because he was cooperating and admitting his guilt. And in the end, like I said, he was sentenced to 20 years. But despite asking nicely, shockingly was not sent to the same prison as his younger brother because they didn't want to exactly reward that behavior.
Right. And you don't get to just pick that. Like,
where
it
you
doesn't
go.
work that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the point where I wanted to point out how fucking stupid everything I just said was. Like every single thing I just said is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because yeah, like you said, you don't rape someone to go to prison if you don't like raping people. Like that's not your first choice of a way to go to prison.
No, you might have been thinking about that as well, but that's not the primary motivation.
Absolutely not. No. And one more thing to sort of like drive home the type of people we're dealing with. His mother, the stepmother of the victim, was angry at the judge for not considering, quote, both sides of the story. Like, should he get less time because it's understandable on some level? Like,
no.
Yeah, and this is your stepdaughter. Like, what the fuck?
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah. So Paul serves 11 of these 20 years because we don't give a shit about women in general.
No. If he really wanted to go for a long time, he should have started dealing drugs.
Yeah, then he would have gone in more because they care more about that than, you know, rape. So he was, I believe, the very first person when he was released who had to register as a sex offender in Bernalillo County in 2006, which is in New Mexico. A recent law had been passed, and he was the first one who had to do that, which is kind of interesting. From there, it's actually not super clear what he did or where he lived, but I know he ended up in Albuquerque. And in 2021, he got into more trouble with police after attacking a cop. Pardon me. Which he could have done to begin with. But shockingly, he only got 3 years. But I don't know like exactly what happened during the attack. Like maybe he just took a swing at him, or maybe he was like, quote unquote, resisting arrest. Because I know last episode we were talking about how like you go to prison like for life if you do shit like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But apparently that's not the case here, as he only got 3 years and 2 of those were suspended. So he got 1 year, and he'd actually been in prison for so long by the time he was sentenced that he got out after 44 days. I also want to tell you that until 1997, New Mexico had a 15-year statute of limitations for murder.
15.
So
holy shit.
Yeah. So if you murdered somebody in let's say it's 1997 and you murdered somebody in 1980, you could confess and you wouldn't go to prison.
Wow. That's really impressive. Also, sorry, this is completely besides the point, but did you know that in Italy, if you murder someone and you're over 80, you just can't go to prison for anything?
You said that, I think, a couple episodes ago, and I was like,
oh, sorry.
Fuck, no, repeat it.
Repeating myself. Yeah.
No. That's all crazy.
I just think about that a lot. Like, if someone wants to become an elderly Italian serial killer, like they really could.
Yeah, I mean, but even if you get like 10 years, you might still die in prison. Like the sentence might still be long enough for you to die there. I don't know. I'd have to know more about the laws.
They just don't put old people in jail at all.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah.
God, that's so weird. Well, New Mexico was very Italian in their approach, at least until 1997. And what they did was they repealed that law. So now there's no statute of limitations. And they also had that retroactive for any cases that had happened in the last 15 years. So still, to this day, if you murdered somebody in New Mexico in 1981, you could admit to it and you wouldn't be able to be prosecuted. But that's 1982 wild. On, like, look out. Isn't that crazy?
That's really wild. Yeah.
So anyway, that might be outdated information. They maybe have like expanded that to like anybody, but at least for a long time, it was just 1982 onward. So
Okay.
anyway, back to Paul. After he gets released from jail for hitting the cop, he tells his parole officer, like, oh, I'm going to go stay at this, like, shelter because I'm homeless and I don't have anywhere to live. And one really interesting way that we criminalize homelessness in America is that if you're on parole, you cannot be homeless or you will go back to jail just for that, for not having an
That's
address.
so stupid. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Oh
they
my
say
God.
it's like, because we need to be able to keep track of you. And I get that, but like, and a lot of the times what happens is people just register at shelters and then they don't really stay there. But that was kind of the case with him. So they went looking for him because they're like, where the fuck are you? You're not at the shelter. You never checked in. So they arrest him and they hold him on this parole violation. And while he's in custody, he either asks to be interviewed or just is for some reason. Like, I don't really know. But Paul starts confessing to a string of rapes and murders throughout the 1980s and 90s.
Oh my
Cops,
gosh.
yeah, cops are like dumbfounded by this. But they definitely pay attention because one of the people he said he killed was a very high profile case that to this point was not solved. So I'll start at what he
Okay.
says is his first murder, that of Althea Oakley. On the evening of June 22nd, 1988, Althea Oakley was walking home by herself from a party near the University of New Mexico, where I believe she was a student. She
Hmm.
just got into a fight with her boyfriend because she wanted him to leave his friend's birthday party to take her to the movies, and he said no. She's like,
Okay.
let's leave, let's go to the movies. And he's like, nope, I'm staying with my friends. So
Okay.
it just sounds like a very standard
Typical.
young
Yeah.
couple
Whatever.
fight. Yeah. She was walking home down Buena Vista Street and was super close to her house, like yards away. And she was attacked from behind and stabbed multiple times. A woman who lived in the house she was in front of when she was attacked said that she came out because she heard Althea's screams for help and
Ugh.
saw a Latino man fleeing the scene on foot.
Okay.
She said Althea was covered in blood and said she didn't want to die and that she'd been stabbed and tried to kind of walk to her own house before she collapsed outside on the grass. She
Oh my
died
gosh. So close to home.
so close. And I always hate hearing that. I don't know
Yeah.
why it matters. It's just like it seems so much safer once you get inside.
Yeah.
Um, but she died shortly thereafter in the hospital during surgery. Actually, they were trying to save her and she
Okay.
died on the table, which is fucked.
Ugh.
Now, in his confession, Paul said he was working as a security guard for the technical college next to the university. So another fucking security guard committing murder because there's so
Wow.
many of those.
Yeah. It's interesting.
There's just no oversight in the hiring process for those guys, which is
Yeah.
like really ironic in like a
I mean,
terrible
it
fucking
is,
way.
when you think about it, a job that's kind of like being a cop too. And we know that
Yeah.
we have so many police serial killers too that we did a list about it before, and we could do
Yeah.
another one because there's
Oh my
so
God.
many.
Yeah, we really could.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another one of these. He said that he saw Althea walking and decided to follow her, intending to rape her in a nearby parking lot. He said he was doing this because he hated women and wanted to get revenge on the world, basically, and ended
Mhm.
up just somehow stabbing her to death. He used a 5 small-inch Swiss Army pocket knife to stab her over and over and said he was surprised at the amount of damage that it did. So basically
God.
diminishing his role, trying to say he didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He also said that part of why he didn't rape her, and this confuses me, is that as she walked by him, she smiled and said hi, which is a really
What?
weird reason to brutally stab someone to death instead of raping them. Like, maybe just leave her the fuck alone. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Okay.
It's weird, right? Like, well, I
Yeah.
was
There's a
gonna
little
rape her, but
serial killers always have this like special logic of their own.
yeah, I don't know. He also later said that this murder always stuck with him because he couldn't understand why he harmed someone who was being nice to him. And it's like, yeah, I don't fucking understand that either,
Or
dude.
just don't do it, regardless of what they smile at or not.
Yeah, just
Like,
leave them entirely alone.
yeah.
Now, in addition to the murders, he also admitted to at least 3 rapes, and I believe at least one of those was before this murder, so he's already on a tear here. And in fact, the week he gave this confession, DNA testing from a rape kit taken in the 1990s finally came back as positive for his DNA. So
Oh
he
my
would have been
God.
arrested for that rape anyway, but he didn't know that when he confessed. And also, like, what the fuck is going on that it takes 31 years for them to test a rape kit?
Yeah.
Like, That's how backlogged they were. And why is it that like the rape kits are what get pushed back, right? Like, I don't understand
Always,
that.
yeah.
Always, right? It's fucking ridiculous. So we have confirmation of at least one rape and his confession for the killing of Althea Oakley. Now, in this same confession, he confessed to, quote unquote, like the big one of his 3 murders. And this was the murder of Caitlin Arquette, who was the daughter of Lois Duncan Arquette, the author of I Know What You Did Last Summer, as well as a bunch of other young adult thrillers.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was a book.
Yeah.
No
They
idea.
adapted it. Yeah, it's an adaptation.
Okay. All right.
So Caitlin's death has a few different takes, and I don't know which one is true because Lois made like a website about this, and there's a ton of information as they're working through the case. So
Yeah.
it might be like, well, this was what we thought before, and then we thought this, and now we think that. So it kind of muddied my research a little bit because it was difficult to know exactly what happened. But
Yeah.
essentially, on the night of June 16th, 1989, Caitlin was shot while driving her car home from a friend's house. But it's not obviously as simple as that.
Right.
Paul, of course, diminishes his role, saying he was just out shooting randomly. Like he said he used to drive around with a gun in his car and would like occasionally just like shoot at people, which I think is really fucking weird.
Okay.
Yeah. And that she was just one of the victims.
Just a casual Friday night for me, just gonna go out and boop, 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 boop.
Shoot some fools. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did do this. This is true and real. He absolutely 100% shot other people, and some of them survived. And in one case, he was arrested and did some time.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's not lying. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of what he's saying is like can be verified to this point. But even at that point, when he was arrested for shooting someone else from his car or shooting whatever he did, they didn't connect him to this.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, I was just driving around. I saw her. I followed her, whatever. What really happened is that he was watching her. It's not clear for how long, if it was just that night, like it kind of was with Althea, but he watched and followed her car and either drove her off the road and then shot her while she was inside her crashed car, or shot her while she was driving, hitting her in the head twice and causing her to lose control and crash her car.
Oh my God.
Yeah, either way, she was absolutely the intended target, and this was like not at all random. Yeah, even if he had only been following her for a minute, it was an intentional, she was the one he was looking for.
Yeah.
Police arrived on the scene of the crash super quickly while Paul was still on the scene. But apparently, and again, this is one of those things that I've read both ways, but apparently his car was gone. So it's not clear if he had an accomplice or what. I'm honestly, like I said, kind of confused about this because his take is that he was walking up to the car when police arrived and that his car was parked nearby. But Lois Duncan reported that his car was seen fleeing the scene while he was still there talking to police. So I don't know. But either way, he was at the scene of the crime and police let him go. And he had a criminal record.
Like, there's like more than one ways that cops could have like fucking gotten him.
Yes, and chose not to because they're the fucking worst.
Yes.
So they treated him as a witness, and they didn't take gunshot residue tests of his hands. They didn't take him in for anything. They just talked to him at the scene and then let him go. I do believe a few days later they called and interviewed him, but just like as a witness, or came by his house as a witness.
Yeah. Just like, okay, have a nice day, gentlemen.
Yeah, that was it. Like, thanks for your information. And he was like literally at the fucking car while she's dead inside. Like he's at the scene. So for a long time, I think this is part of it, but Lois Duncan, who obviously was like a super loud advocate for the solving of this crime, was convinced the murder was tied to a crime ring that Caitlin knew about. And in fact, 2 other suspects had been arrested, but were eventually released due to lack of evidence. And this was because Caitlin's boyfriend at the time was involved in gang-related drug dealing, and supposedly she was going to go to the cops about that. So
okay, all right. I mean, that's like something to look into for sure.
For sure. And they did, and they arrested these 2 guys, and then they were like, we don't actually have any evidence, so they let them go.
Yeah.
For a long time, Lois continued to hold on to this theory, but also had mention of Paul on her website, and I believe also in her book that she wrote, which was called Who Killed My Daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She also said that she stopped writing thrillers because after her daughter's murder, she couldn't imagine writing fiction where a young woman is in danger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so pretty fucking sad. But despite all of Lois's trying, the case had long gone cold by the time that Paul confessed. Now, at one point, Lois had hired a PI who even interviewed Paul while he was in prison for his stepsister's rape. The PI asked who else was with him, why he was there, and he said that Paul was super evasive and super nervous when talking about it. So the
Ugh.
PI was extremely suspicious of Paul, and yet police still didn't investigate him as a possible suspect. Which, like,
Okay.
what the
Cool.
actual fuck?
Yeah. Just do your jobs for once or not
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
But okay.
Police did arrest 3 Latino men about 6 months after the murder. But they, like I said, they were released. From here, he didn't confess to anything else, but was arrested and taken to jail while the police investigated his claims. So he said, I killed Althea, I killed Caitlin, and the cops were like, okay, they couldn't arrest him for those because even if somebody confesses, you like have to get evidence basically to
Right.
put them away. So they held him on a parole violation. And a couple of months into being in jail on this parole violation, Paul came forward and confessed to yet another murder.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, but couldn't remember the name of this victim. Luckily, he remembered enough details that the police were able to piece together who it was after speaking with the family of 13-year-old Stella Gonzalez.
Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, and her case had long gone cold. This murder took place in September of 1988, so after Althea, but before Caitlin.
Okay.
And on the night of this murder, Stella and a friend had been out walking around 1 a.m., probably after sneaking out, which, like, yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're 13, it's 1 in the morning, like, she's probably the cool kid, I don't want to,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No judgment.
No judgment. According to her friend, 3 men drove by in a car and tried to get them to get in the car with them, which is fucking terrifying in itself. And the girls declined, and the car then drove away. But the friend said the car circled back, and while driving by, one of the men inside the car fired 2 shots at the girls, both of which hit Stella in the head.
Oh, that's horrifying.
I know. And like, what kind of fucking luck is that's what happens,
Yeah.
So I did want to point out this is pretty interesting because it gives credence to the idea that Paul didn't act alone in the murder of Caitlin. Because
Right.
if his car wasn't there, that means somebody else drove it away. So who is this person doing these things with him?
Yeah.
It could have been his brother because his brother wasn't in prison for murder at this time, I don't
Because
think.
she said 2 men were in the car.
She
And
said
one of them
3.
shot. 3. Okay.
3. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but also other reports said that he was in his car by himself.
Okay.
And that the witness, the friend, was just mistaken. But I don't know. Like, how would that be? Her official thing was it was the same car.
Interesting.
Yeah. And just to mention this, his car was an orange VW Bug.
Oh, so Bundy.
Exactly. Very Ted Bundy of him. A few weeks later, he shot a transgender woman, apparently because he wanted to rape her and was angered by, quote, being fooled.
Oh my God.
So he shot her. And in one of his interviews, he said that he got a reduced sentence because he convinced the police that he did it because she fooled him.
Oh my God. Yeah. We did an episode about this where that was like, the cops are like, oh, okay. As if that's like acceptable. The trans panic, gay panic.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what was used here. And it worked because he did go, this is the one that the person that he shot that he went to jail for, but obviously not for very fucking long because he's back out in 1995 raping his stepsister. So like, what the fuck?
Right.
So yeah. He also shot another woman in the face while they were both driving, but he read on the news that she had survived. So we have, 2 shootings that don't result in death, 2 shootings that do result in death, a confirmed rape, 2 other rapes that he admitted to, but we don't know if he did. I don't know if there's, proof yet. And then the stabbing death.
Oh
right?
God.
Yeah. So after that, we have another sort of gray area in his timeline. And then again, in 2021, he confessed to these crimes, including these murders and all this other shit. Now, we also know for a fact that he was known. He definitely was at the scene of the crime of both Althea and Caitlin's murders, but was not really interviewed by police as a suspect in either situation. Because Althea's murder, he was on duty as, a security guard when he did it. So it made sense that he would be there. And he just said, oh, I wasn't in the area or whatever.
always investigate the fucking security guard. I mean, we just
I
covered like
know.
3 or 4 different cases where it was the guard in the apartment
Exactly.
one, remember? And then the
Yes.
apartment worker. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking
The
nuts.
security guard. Yeah.
It's also known that Stella's friend had told police that the man who killed Stella lived in her apartment building and that she was afraid of him. And can you guess who that man was?
Oh my God.
Paul Apodaca. Yeah.
Okay.
And still nothing. So what the fuck? It's like they were trying to not solve these cases.
Oh yeah. Well, they try to not do that a lot. So
They do, especially when it's like, marginalized communities, which there are quite a few of in New Mexico. But the weird thing is that like even Caitlin's murder, like she was very high profile, she was white, and it's like,
yeah,
and the people who were arrested were not white. But I think that was the thing, is they were trying to like,
just wrap it up.
Yeah, just wrap it up. They didn't actually give a shit about actually, solving it.
Right.
So finally in 2022, he was formally charged, first with Caitlin's murder, then Stella's, despite her friend having passed away, and finally that of Althea Oakley.
Okay.
It took police a while to confirm he was in fact a murderer, and luckily they were all killed within the time frame that there is no statute of limitations. So he did all of these when it counts still.
What's the point of statute of limitations? Can someone explain the benefit of it to me? Like,
I mean, like white collar crime, like sure, I feel like if you steal
but
money
for violent
and get away
crime,
with it, like,
yeah.
But also, I feel like the type of people who do those capers, like they're the ones who are being looked for literally forever. Like if you steal money from a bank, like they will never stop hunting for you.
For sure. Yeah.
But if you rape women or kill women or whatever, there's like, oh well, we've got a 7-year statute of limitations for rape, so just have a nice big cooling off period or hide out for a while and you'll be fine. It's like fucking ridiculous. So as for what happens next with Paul, we still don't have a final answer. He's still being held in jail awaiting trial, but the charges are official. There are a few issues with his confession, and he now has a lawyer straight up claiming his innocence, which is pretty wild.
Okay.
But the lawyer did point out the following. All of the information Paul gave was readily available in the news, so he didn't tell them anything that only the killer would know.
Okay.
He was seemingly either very intoxicated or sick at the time of the confessions. Like he was like slurring and like falling asleep, and there was a lot of weird shit going on.
Yeah.
And lastly, because of, the length of time, there is zero physical evidence that he committed any of these crimes except for the rape.
So it might be hard to convict him even.
It might be if he chooses to fight it. It could be difficult. Yeah, because I don't, he doesn't have that car anymore. I don't know what evidence they still have, if any of it would have his DNA on it
But there are
the
witness reports that he was physically there.
Yes, but Stella's friend died, so it's like she can't.
Right.
She was the only person. I mean, Althea's murder, somebody saw his face.
Yeah.
Like as he ran away, but the sketch does not look like him. And it's really hard to know if they would be able to identify him. And they have given interviews, but they don't want to be named. So I'm not really sure how involved they'd be willing to get. So the only person who really had a good look at him and like named who he was is no longer alive. So that's pretty fucked.
Wow.
Yeah. But that being said, I mean, he was present at 2 of the 3 crime scenes, like for sure. He has a history of violence and rape, and he confessed. So we'll see what happens.
Right.
I did want to point out, because I kind of started by saying something shitty about his mom. But the only other person that he confessed to and he told her everything was his mother, and she never told a soul.
What?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Oh my God. That sucks.
I know. So that's cool. Pretty fucked up, but there it is. So he's in prison. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that's going to kind of be the theme, I think, for this week, is like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, because it's so recent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, there it is.
Wow. Amazing. What a fucking asshole. And
yes.
So is his mom. So.
Yep. She sucks too. It all comes from the top.
All right. Well, my case is quite similar in some ways in the random shooting aspect.
Oh, great.
I'm going to talk about the Stockton serial killer.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right.
Or we now know his name. It's Wesley Brownlee.
Yes, this was a really interesting one.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal and insane. And it's very much ongoing. So I picked kind of 2 that were a bit more recent. Mm-hmm. But just also spoiler alert to get people to listen to part 2. The second case I have is like cartoonishly brutal. Like it's like literally one of the most violent things I've ever covered. So
Oh
I'm
God.
excited about it.
When you say that, it scares me because you go for broke like all the time.
Yeah, no, I picked it on purpose to like ruin your day. So,
oh, thanks.
you're
Love
welcome.
that.
So anyway, so this is all took place in Stockton, pretty much from 2021 through 2022. Our story starts right in. We're just going to jump right in here with the first shooting, which took place on April 10th, 2021.
Okay.
In 40-year-old Juan Miguel Vasquez, who was at the time experiencing homelessness, was shot and killed. He also worked as a car mechanic for hire, and was well liked in the neighborhood.
Okay.
April, just trying to include, something about them because they're people.
Yes. 100%.
April, crazy idea. April 16th, a couple days later, 46-year-old Natasha Latour, who was also experiencing homelessness at the time, was shot in Stockton. And I didn't get the exact number, but she was shot multiple times and she survived.
Wow.
She's going to be the only surviving victim. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep. And she later on will go on the news. You can watch like the interviews with her, and her description of what happened to her is horrifying. She said a man came up to her and wearing like a COVID like face mask and just shot her. She came out of her tent to kind of be like, hey, what's up? And he just pointed a gun at her and didn't say anything, just fired.
Yeah. And I think this case shows that he's like targeting victims that are already marginalized. He's just like going for like the easy prey, essentially.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'll kind of talk about his MO at the end a little bit. And there's a lot of speculation about like why he's doing this. Obviously, it's just random as well, but there's a little bit of MO for sure. Right. So Natasha will also later say that she thinks the subsequent murders could have been prevented if police investigated her case more seriously, but she feels that they did not.
Of course not. Of course not. And that is 100% for sure. Because I mean, she's taken all the boxes of like cops don't give a shit about you.
Yes, she is a Black homeless woman. And the people like who, sorry, my brain is like having a short circuit. No, and the cops investigators like take a minute to like put this together as like they're all linked. And I think it's because, I mean, they do get him obviously, but her point was like, because of who the victims are, it's taking them longer to like give a shit.
Right. So it takes them a lot longer to put this together because they don't really fucking give a shit to put it together.
Yeah, it takes them a while. So later that same day, Mervyn Harmon was shot and killed in Alameda County. And Melvin was a beloved father of 3. So those first 2 victims are the only 2 that are homeless. The rest of them are not. So, but they're all shot alone at night in like a vulnerable position, like they're alone in a park or something, right? That's kind of how he just finds people that are totally alone.
Right.
So then July 8th comes around, boop, 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 and 35-year-old Paul Yaw was shot at a park in Stockton. He really likes parks. And his mother just has a poignant quote here. His mother said, quote, "It was such a senseless killing. He wasn't doing anything to anybody. He didn't even have time to defend himself."
Wow. Yeah.
He just rolls up on him and just
shoots him.
Yep. Yeah. April 11th, 43-year-old Salvador DeBooty Jr. Is shot and killed at a fast food restaurant parking lot, and he was also the father of a teen daughter, which is really sad. August 30th, 2021, Jonathan Rodriguez Hernandez, who's 21, was shot and killed. And all of these shootings, by the way, are very close to each other on the map of Stockton. They're like within 1.5 miles of each other. Right.
So he's just got this like really specific hunting ground.
Yes. September 21st, we're just marching right along here. He shoots and kills 52-year-old Juan Cruz. And then September 27th, wait, what year am I in? I said 2021.
That's 2021, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I think I lost track of like time here. No, I'm confused. What year is it? I think this all happened in 2022. I'm lying. This is all 2022. Scratch what I said about the thing. I think,
dude, after COVID, time has no meaning. So
Anyway, we're in 2022 right now. Okay. So September 27th, 54-year-old Lawrence Lopez Sr., a father of 6, was shot and killed. And here's a statement from his ex-wife, quote, "He was minding his own business on the sidewalk, and this dude just shot him and left him in the gutter. He was an amazing dad and didn't deserve this." So just a little,
so
just to
sad.
give you a sprinkling of who these people were. In September 30th, a couple days later, police announced that 5 of these murders were the work of one killer. So they're finally getting it together.
Mm-hmm.
And they released a video of a suspect, which essentially shows a man walking from behind. You can't see his face, but he has a very distinctive gait. It's kind of uneven, like he has a limp.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days later, they also announced that the attempted murder of Natasha Latour, and the murder of Juan Vasquez from 2021. Oh, so the first 2 were from the previous year, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's a break, and then okay. So they also say that they know the reason they know that all these cases are linked is from ballistics evidence. It's the same exact gun.
Okay.
And also the proximity, like I mentioned.
Right.
So October 15th of last year, we all remember the news. The police arrest 43-year-old Wesley Brownlee of Stockton while he was driving. And they had been surveilling him. And the most haunting, craziest part of the story is that they caught him about to kill someone else, like a minute away from it. Yeah. He was literally on the hunt, that's how they described it. And they were watching him, like, I'll discuss that more in a second. But they said they made a quote unquote split second decision to arrest him because there was a victim and he was like about to kill him. And they were like, boop, 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 and they just got in there.
Okay.
So what do we know about Wesley Brownlee? Not a ton, but here's what we know so far. He was a truck driver who had grown up in Oakland, and he had just moved to Stockton that summer. He lived within a mile and a half of the murder map.
Wait, say that again? What's that?
He lived within a mile and a half of the murder site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said murder map, but I was like, what?
Yeah, murder map. I meant in my head, I was picturing the map.
Where they all are. Okay. I was like, what? Okay, sorry, I got confused there. Okay.
He had drug convictions. He couldn't legally own a firearm, and the gun he was using purportedly for this was a ghost gun, so it was not registered. He had served some prison time for dealing cocaine, and that's it. But in 1994, he had been suspected of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl along with 2 other boys, but he was never prosecuted for it.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we don't know more about that case, but he didn't get any charges. People have also pointed out that in 1995 in Oakland, when he was 16, his brother was shot and killed. So some, trauma there.
Yeah. Wait, how old was his brother?
I think it was his younger brother.
Oh, okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
That is sad. I mean, that
it is
sucks,
sad,
but also fuck this guy.
Exactly. I'm not making excuses, but it is interesting. Police came to Wesley Brownlee as a suspect because multiple people identified him from the video of him walking, because they're like, that's how he walks, right? These people would later split the reward money, which I think was like 100-something thousand. So hey, call in, if you think you know who people are.
Yeah, for real.
And once they locked into him as a suspect, they began to surveil him. And that's when they, had to just intervene because they realized what was happening.
Yeah.
So Stockton police held a press conference a few days later to announce the arrest. Here's some of the stuff they said. Quote, his patterns were consistent with some of the patterns we had seen around parks, around dark places, stopping, looking around, moving again. He was on a mission to kill. He was out hunting. As officers made contact with him, he was wearing dark clothing and a mask around his neck. He was also armed with a firearm when he was taken into custody. We are sure we stopped another killing.
Ooh, that's so scary. It's like a real life, true crime novel.
Yes. Yeah. And they even think they know who his next victim was going to be because there was someone alone at a nearby park when they intercepted him.
Oh, and that's so scary.
And he was circling him. Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That poor guy too.
I wonder if they told him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was my question. Do you think they told him?
Yeah. And they also confirmed that they had kind of locked in on him as a suspect and had done investigation with ballistics as well. So his gun matches the gun and the bullets and stuff. And they also were tracking his cell phone. So his phone was in the locations at the right times. So I just wanted to briefly comment on what people have been making of his MO and victim profile. and potential motive, which we can talk about, speculate about. Some people have speculated that perhaps these are racially motivated murders because 4 are, I think, out of the 7 total victims were Latinx males. But we can't really be sure of any racial motivation yet. But I think what's for sure is that he was targeting people who are obviously like vulnerable, like I think 3, or I said 2 before, but 3 out of the total 7 were experiencing homelessness. So I don't know. It's hard to say if there's a racial thing or if it's, I don't know. I mean, he wore dark clothes, and like I said, and he approached everyone in like the dead of night so they couldn't see him coming. Like you said, I think he just wanted easy prey. I think he just didn't want to fight. He didn't want anyone, who looked like they were gonna do anything.
Yeah, like I think who he targeted, it was less about like who they were and more about just like where they were, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And none of his victims were robbed. So it's also my opinion that he was just like, I don't know, maybe he will come out with some fucking like manifesto style, like greater, higher motivation, but I think he was killing people just to kill people.
Maybe. That's fucking crazy.
Like, yeah, I don't know. It just seems really random and pointless. And So a few days after his arrest, he was charged with 3 of the murders and held without bail. A public defender was appointed to him because he said he didn't know if he could appoint his own lawyer. On December 27th, he was charged with 4 additional counts of murder. So they're all he's been charged with everything. And then an additional count for the attempted murder of Natasha Latour. So anyway, so he's got 7 counts and 1 count of attempted, I think. So he hasn't been officially linked. He hadn't been officially linked to all these murders until that announcement. So there was like a couple months delay. And this is when the whole timeline like comes into view properly of like everything he's accused of doing.
Wow.
So on January 17th of this year, he had a court appearance that had to do with a subpoena that prosecutors ordered, requesting documents relating to his educational and employment history, because clearly they're, putting together their case.
Right.
And his lawyer complained that was a violation of his right to privacy, but the judge ruled that they could subpoena those records. That was the big exciting.
I mean, but that's really stupid. Like, why would you, like, how is that not pertinent to the case? Like, what a weird thing to try to do.
Yeah, so they're clearly fighting it. He's going to plead not guilty, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And there has been speculation, this is interesting, that these shootings were done by the same perpetrator who committed a series, I think, of only 2 random shootings in Chicago in 2018. And I guess they were quite similar because the shootings were execution style. And a video of this killer in Chicago was caught that had a similar gait and was wearing a face mask.
Oh shit. And he was there at that time, or they're trying to prove it.
They're definitely going to look into it. I think the officials said like, we will look into it, but there's no evidence yet. But he has family in Chicago.
That's so wild.
Was he visiting and just did a brief, murder spree?
Yeah.
So we don't know for sure, but it's possible the guy is limping, So that's where we are currently. That's everything I could find about it pretty much. A trial date has yet to be set. There's some news stories in March this month that came out that said that they're still weighing whether or not they can pursue the death penalty, but it's not off the table. So even though, like we said in the death row week a couple weeks ago, that it's pointless in California, and unless we get some like hardcore Republican governor, they're just never gonna like execute people. But it's more symbolic at this point to show like, you're really, really bad. We don't like you,
Right. And also like, it's like, I think I said this last time, but I think like being on death row is like way shittier than just being in regular prison.
Yeah.
So I think that's also kind of like, I don't know if that's like an intentional thought when they do that, but I think that that's another part of it,
For sure. Yeah. So that's the Stockton serial killer.
Jesus.
And yeah, it's an interesting case. It'll be interesting to see it unfold. In the trial and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that was just a few months ago that we were like watching that shit online, was like him in that like apartment complex, like walking around and like,
I remember visiting the Bay Area and being like, oh, I shouldn't go to Stockton, like
one of our listeners, who you are, he was like living in that area and like out late at night, and I'm like, please stop doing that, like we love you and we don't want you to get hurt. So
it reminds me of the DC sniper case, which I really want to do for a Patreon. I have like Patreon dibs on it because I really want to do it.
Dude, that's fine. I would just do that
so horrible. And like, but that was even crazier because those were in broad daylight.
I've noticed the difference between you and me. You like doing the really big cases with lots and lots of murders, and I like doing the ones that are just like one really intricate, like single murder or like just
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
couple.
for sure.
I think it says something about how our brains work. That's interesting. Like yours can
Yeah.
process a larger amount of information than
I
mine.
love processing information. It's my
Yeah.
favorite. Yeah, I love it.
Well, fuck, dude. These are so gnarly. And like it's
Yeah.
crazy that are these all No, obviously mine's not New Mexico.
New
Mine's New Mexico.
Mexico.
But like I feel like the other one I did is California, I think.
My other one is from Mexico.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's
Yeah.
not all. I'm like, is it just California that has like current serial killers?
There was a really crazy Korean one as well that I really thought about. But
Yeah.
I didn't, because I was like, oh, I'll do one American one.
There you go. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm just always like, I like to stay close to home.
What's crazy is that like I think Canada or Korea's like never had a serial killer, or like there was
Really?
yeah, they're like extremely like crime free, and this I'll send you this story about it so you can still read about it, because it was a huge story, because they were like, a murder happened, like, at all.
Well, you would think that like somebody would just want to do that just to be the first. Like that alone would make somebody want to do it. It's crazy that that's like not been a thing.
No, it's interesting. Not that there's, we don't think that movies make you do crime or anything, but like it is interesting to me that they would be so nonviolent as a culture, because they make the best fucking horror movies.
Seriously.
Yeah, and the most violent, insane horror movies. Yeah. But I guess they're just getting it all out, like,
creatively, artistically.
Through art, yes.
Yeah, that's a much better way to do it than how we do it here in America.
Yeah, we do all the above, so.
Yeah, we do. We broad strokes, we cover everything.
Yeah.
Oof. All right. Well, there's round 1. We'll be back soon with round 2. Mm-hmm. Thanks everybody for listening. Follow us on Patreon, Instagram, TikTok. We got a website. There's stickers. I finally got the sticker order in and they're coming. So if you guys want to order stickers, please feel free to
leave us a good review to make up for the probably bad reviews that the people Cindy argued with on Instagram are going to give us.
The white ladies who are telling me to be quiet and listen, and yet like nobody is fucking... Nobody who is not white is like telling me to do that. So
yeah.
Anyway, cool. Pretty cool. Whatever. All right. Until next episode,
stay
off our
list.
Bye.